Welcome back to American Agenda, turning now to our poll vault, where we bring you the latest and most relevant information from surveys across the country. Here to weigh in, former Chief of Staff to Senator Mike Lee and opinion editor for the Deseret News, Boyd Matheson, and CEO of Annandale Capital, George C. So let's start with this. In a new general election poll, gentlemen, from Zogby, Democratic candidate Joe Biden leads with 48%, President Trump at 42%. So, George, I almost don't even feel like national polls matter at this point.
Bob, that's really interesting you said that. You took the words right out of my mouth. Biden's going to win California by like 60, 65%. Right. New York as well. That's an irrelevant poll. It doesn't matter. All that matters are the battleground states. That's the whole ball of wax.
Yeah, and a poll from the Democracy Institute is showing us the two candidates how they will fare in those battleground states. Overall, look at this. President leading by 5 percentage points and ahead in Florida, ahead in Minnesota, ahead in New Hampshire. And I should mention that there are some other polls where it does show Biden ahead, but this is quite the reverse, I think, of the past few weeks when everybody was assuming that Joe Biden may have had an easy time with this.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note on all of those polls that we're a week out from Labor Day, and that's where things are really going to get some full attention and get a little hot and heavy. All are within the margin of error. You mentioned some of those polls that have Biden up slightly, the president up slightly. And here's the interesting thing. If you go back to 2016, everyone says the polls were wrong. Actually, were pretty much right. They figured it was going to be about a 2.5% percentage point in the end, which it was. But as George rightly pointed out, it's those critical battleground states. And those were all sort of within the margin of error going into the election. And then, of course, the hardest thing is getting the right kind of polling and sample sizing in those battleground states to actually make it actually mean something in terms of where the election's headed.
Yeah, the only way you can tell what the outcome is going to be is to know who's going to vote and how they're going to vote. And that's what election days are for, right? So a new poll from the Democracy Institute asked voters what issue was most important to them. And look at this, law and order. 37%. That is the largest issue. Economy and jobs, 27%, followed by coronavirus at, I should say, just 13%. We didn't even know about coronavirus a year ago, but there it is. Education, 13, immigration, 10. So it sounds, George, like law and order, this may be helping the president in some of those polls.
Bob, I would come back to your margin of error comment. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was predicted by all the mainstream media to be a 95% lock to win, and every single battleground state was within the margin of error, and it was clearly a 50-50 election, especially with Trump voters who don't admit they're going to vote for Trump. So if you come back to the law and order issue, and let's just say Trump ends up winning, basically, we're going to turn to the Democratic convention where the riots were not addressed at all, and clearly Americans are unfavorably disposed towards that, and the unbelievably effective outreach by the convention towards African Americans and Hispanic Americans by the Republicans. It will be the swing factors for a Trump victory. But if your listeners want to see who's going to win, the best tell is that if all the battleground states are within the margin of error a week before the election, the president wins. If multiple states are outside the margin of error for Biden, it'll be much tougher for him to win.
That may be the case, Boyd, but there is the argument, Boyd, that Hillary Clinton was expected by so many to win. What was it, 95% on the day of the election from the New York Times? I may be off, but there were at least 85%. That may have meant that people didn't turn out to vote who otherwise might have voted. How do you think that dynamic will be different this time?
And don't worry if you were off a little bit, Bob, because everyone else, including the New York Times, was off by a lot.
Good point.
So I think you're in good company there. And I think what it's really going to show in the end is exactly what this poll is showing in terms of what matters most to Americans. We know there's this big movable middle group. Again, not just independents, but some Democrats, some Republicans. And the thing that matters to them is exactly what this poll is saying, that, yes, law and order matters. Why? Because they're about community. They want to know about personal responsibility, self-reliance. They want to know about compassion. They want to know about opportunity for themselves. And those top three issues there, law and order, economy and jobs, and then dealing with the pandemic so that they can move forward in a positive way. Those are the issues that this critical group of American voters really care about. And whoever speaks to those first and best will carry the day on the first Tuesday in November.
George, I'll give the last word to you. What do you think?
I would agree with those comments, except for one thing. I would say that I think the people who are yet to make up their minds and being concrete is more like 5 to 15% of the electorate. I think it's a very small number of voters, and how those folks break in the last 20 to 30 days will tell who wins. And I'd give Trump a 40% chance of winning. I'd give Biden in a squeaker. I'd give Biden a 30% chance of winning in a squeaker, and I'd give about a 30% chance that Biden wins big. But I'd bet on Trump right now if I had to place a bet.
Boyd, very quickly, do you think James Comey last time hurt Hillary? And that was 10 days out.
Yeah, in the end, I think a lot of people had already, to George's point, I think a lot of people had already made that commitment at that point in the game. So I don't think it was the big swing. I don't think we're going to have any kind of October surprise this round because a lot of people are voting now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And some by mail when that happens, which may come up as an issue, maybe with you gentlemen again. Boyd Matheson, George C., thank you very much for being with us. And coming up, more of American Agenda after this.